podcast. Hell yeah, brother. Overload, brother.
Beats by @Smoke M2D6.
Welcome to another Seattle Overload previewing the NFL draft. And yes, this is coming out Wednesday morning for you guys, but hopefully it will stay time relevant because this episode we're going to preview the offensive tackles in the class, and the Seahawks are surely going to take one, right? Griffin, thoughts on that tie?
Agree.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty safe. Say there's more than a 50% chance that happens. Feel good about it.
Yeah, so it's cool because this draft, they have awesome options that will probably be available at 9. And then if you're not going to be in play for the best tackles that are there, then like 40/41 is like the next cool spot value-wise to be there for the next cluster of tackles, because I think that second cluster is going to have some Pro Bowlers on it, and then even the third cluster is going to have some quality starters.
To that point as well, Griff, like that just made me think with the edge group is kind of like, I don't know if I'd want to take one at 9 if it's not, Thibodeau, right?
Yeah.
However, with the tackle stuff, I kind of, but sorry, to finish my point, which is always a good idea. But the edge group in the 40 range kind of exciting, and I'd say the tackle group, we'll get to them. There's a few guys, I'd think about at 9, but then again, like you said, so it's I guess that's kind of the draft overall, right? And most drafts are like that, but particularly drafts lacking that clear, like there's 10 guys who are like really good here.
Yeah.
But I think this draft strength really is in that kind of late first to like round 2, 3 range. Yeah.
But
yeah, the 40 to 41 range and 72, I think there's going to be some options at 72 for them as well. And maybe even 109. So, yeah. See how the board falls.
Yeah, that's the thing. The way this draft goes is that I totally agree. Top 10 it's not the best top 10 draft. However, there's bound to be one blue chip that falls to 9. So if they want to stick and pick, if that blue chip isn't a tackle, they don't have to panic, because there will be a quality guy there at 40 or 41 or even 72 or even further down the line, like you said, Ty. So, I mean, if you think about it, like, not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, and we're going to talk tackles this draft, but the 1 to 3 of the following names, just in all likelihood, have to be there at 9, especially if quarterbacks fall early. But like Stingley, Gardner, Cross, Neal, Ekwonu, Thibodeau, Karlaftis. You could probably add in a couple, maybe Jameson Williams. Like, one of those guys is going to be there. Not all those guys can go top 10. You know what I mean? So, like, if one of those guys is a tackle, then okay, consider tackle or trade back. If it isn't a tackle, don't sweat it. Just take the other guy, the other position player, and or trade back, and then just be patient at 40, and then you can go get another guy that has potential. You know what I mean?
Agreed. So before we get into those exciting names that you mentioned, I think it's worth, as we did with the edge stuff and also cornerback stuff, looking very quickly at what the Seahawks actually want from their tackles. So we can talk attributes and scheme, but I can kick it off with some numbers. So testing-wise, with Shane Waldron and Andy Dickerson's time in Los Angeles, well, were they there when it was St. Louis or St. Louis? No. But anyway, their time there, they typically favored the kind of taller type. They didn't dip below 34 inches in arm length, other than with David Edwards. He had 33/8 of an inch arms, but he was a 5th round pick. And then Alaric Jackson, he's listed on NFL.com as being an 1/8 of an inch shorter than 34 inches. But really, they want the 34-inch long arms, which, again, that ain't dissimilar to the rest of the NFL. And they really looked at they seem to favor having a good enough broad jump and good enough vertical jump, but really the short shuttle time was a thing for them. So in terms of that when they came to Seattle, they hadn't added obviously that many tackles. Cedric Ogbuhe, he came in. He's incredibly long, but he was technically like a re-sign. I'm not sure he counts. And he doesn't have any testing numbers available, though he had a good bench. That was the one thing he did. Stone Forsyth, then, he's obviously that tall type, 307 pounds, arms 34 and 3/8 of an inch, quick short shuttle, 4.63 seconds. And then Kerhan, he's an undrafted free agent, so I'm not sure he counts really. But
he is 6'8", right?
No, Kerhan's 6'6".
Oh, pardon me.
316 pounds, and he only had 33-inch long arms. But then I think the later this goes on, the more, as with everything, the more lenient they'll get with it. But if we just look for arms which are 34 inches and longer, especially if we're talking the first 2 days of the draft, right? And we're saying they have a need here. It would be very surprising, even for the Seahawks, if they weren't to address this in some manner in the first 2 days, especially given the assets they have, especially given the nature of this class, right?
Right.
And then Dwayne Brown, who again doesn't really count because he was already there, but he has over 34-inch long arms, and he ran a really quick 4.52 seconds short shuttle, right?
Right.
So scheme-wise, right? I saw you made an interesting point, Griffin, about under center versus gun run, and try not to get into the quarterback part of that. But how does that kind of impact the tackles?
Real quick, what do they have a height threshold?
Well, so Bobby Evans, he was 6'4", but everyone else, Joseph
Isn't Evans playing guard though for them?
Yeah, he's been like a kind of utility guy. Similar with David Edwards as well. Noteboom was 6'5", and then obviously Whitworth 6'7", who they signed in their first year free agency, 2017.
So to answer your question about scheme, because this is where my mind goes, I think in a perfect world, looking at pass protectors, just about everybody would want 6'8" left tackle that is 36-inch arms. There are only so many of those human beings walking the earth, right? But then where you start to like say, well, one, scarcity, right? But then secondly, where I think offensive minds would go, that's not ideal for every situation, is it comes to run blocking, because you have to get low leverage, you have to dig guys out. Well, if you look at McVay's scheme, at least in LA so far, it's changed a little bit with Stafford. They don't gun run. And if you think about the backside left guard and left tackle, especially the tackles in gun inside zone, to me are much more important than they are, say, under center. Now it's important all the time, but let me give me a second here. If you think about like inside zone, which is the most common gun run, the ball is hitting backside of the center like most of the time, right? Like it's bending behind it. You need the left tackle or the right tackle, depending on the direction of the run and the back alignment, to get movement immediately out of their stance. So you need to get low right away. Whereas if it's under center, even if it's inside zone, they literally have more steps that they can use to their advantage, because by the time the ball bends back. And then if you think the way they block the front side of, say, outside zone, the tackle, they're not bouncing the ball off the tackle. Like they're almost pass setting. They're just turning them out the way they, they have the running back read the play like mid zone, they're trying to crank back for that cutback. So you don't really need a lot of displacement from your tackles because they don't gun run, and of the specific way they block wide zone and mid zone in under center. Now, the tackle is still important, but we're just making relative statements here. They're just slightly less important.
You have you should have the natural leverage advantage. Like if the run's cutting back at that point, you have a natural leverage advantage from under center as a tackle. Really, it's the guard who is doing the meaty work to create the cutback, and then you're just winning to the best possible area.
Right.
That's a great point.
Like, and the cutback and under center mid zone is huge, but the tackle gets 3-4 steps before they, as opposed to Dwayne Brown gun inside zone, the first step has to be powerful enough to get control of the block. Whereas Stone Forsyth, the backside of under center wide zone, I mean, some of his good reps in preseason, because that's all the data we have on him as a pro, he looks better in under center than he does in the gun runs. So from there, so how they roster tackle specifically, I think probably will stem. It might tip what kind of offense they're trying to run. Now, like you said, that might also stem from quarterback style. The other side of it is that if you get a left tackle worth their salt, they're probably going to be good at everything anyway. Like Andrew Whitworth can probably block gun
because
inside
of
zone
the
just fine,
athleticism.
just because he's Andrew Whitworth, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I'm probably getting a little too far in the weeds with it. But as you split hairs, which you can do with the first 3 guys in this class, one guy probably fits what they did the best in LA, and then there's a guy that is probably fits what Seattle did under Tom Cable the best, and there's probably a midpoint answer as well, where it just doesn't matter too much, and like he kind of is best of both worlds. So with that in mind, I don't know. I think they're probably going to gun run more, even if they gun run less than they did with Wilson. They'll probably gun run more than they did in Los Angeles. So probably they're just looking after. I don't know how that affects how they view height. Maybe they skirt height a little bit, but still want long arms. I don't know.
Well, the other thing is the tackles on the roster right now. Jake Curhan, he actually impressed. He did fine as a right tackle, but some of his best reps came on the backside of under center mid zone. Right, he was really good at playing against like head up kind of 4 technique style defensive linemen and sealing them, washing them down, using those extra steps we spoke about, which under center gives you, and getting good wash and movement, displacement on the backside of that. And that was Seattle's best run. And so from them not knowing who their quarterback's going to be, like their bread and butter last year was mid zone, right? Like that was what Rasheed Penny was popping on. Yeah, they had some other stuff like some kind of counter change up, but realistically, well, not realistically, like actually it was mid zone, which was their staple, right? So surely that's what you, especially with the quarterback uncertainty, you know, in terms of talent, that's what you build off, right? This whole mid zone, you layer off that. They finally found the core run that worked for them, and yeah, there's moving pieces now, like Ethan Posick, the new center coming in. But you'd hope that the chemistry can get to a point where they can run the ball effectively. Now, on the opposite side, there is literally Stone Forsyth, and obviously Dwayne Brown's kind of still out there. Now, it's kind of good, like Seattle doesn't have Dwayne Brown now. Like if, for instance, if they sign him after the draft, then they've done well out of it because they haven't tipped the hand. Having this open spot, like the positive of it, if you can get Brown back, is teams may think Seattle really needs a tackle, and then they just don't do anything and just go and get Brown again, right? So it may play in their favor to have such an obvious area of, hey, they're going to literally start a 2021 6th round pick who struggled to learn like the pad level. He's 6'8", you know, he's developmental really in terms of his run blocking in Stone Forsyth. But then again, if you don't get Brown, then you have to address it. So addressing it, the consensus guy is another 6'8" guy, and Evan Neal out of Alabama, right? He's the consensus number 1. You agree with that assessment?
I don't know if what other people, because some people have Ekwonu first, but to me, he's my number 1. Yeah. And right. I think, still plenty of people do have him number 1, but yeah.
And he stands out just because of how huge he is, which is such an obvious point. 34-inch arms, who ticks that box, 337 pounds. So big. But he didn't test in the rest of it, so we don't have his numbers. But, I mean, his ability to move people is nuts, right?
He rules. And he can't be moved either.
Yeah. A movable object.
And he's, technically proficient, and he's not slow-footed. He's awesome. But there are medical red flags apparently that have been reported.
Yeah, so that's interesting because, well, us on the outside, we don't know anything about, we can't judge that. However, Neal is so good that there's no shot without medical issues or, any potential issues that arise. There's no shot Seattle could get him at 9, in my opinion. There's just no way that a tackle of Neal's profile falls that far. However, when you start talking about medicals, maybe he does. But then if the medicals are bad enough to make him fall to 9, then maybe they're bad enough to make him fall all the way down. We just don't know. We can't answer that. But realistically, not a player that is going to be in Seattle's grasp, right?
Yeah, I think he probably goes top 5. So
next up, Ekwonu out of North Carolina State, and the things to mention are he's 6'4", so that's probably borderline for their height stuff. He does have the 34-inch arms though. His 3 cone was 7.82 seconds, which would be they've never drafted someone with that. Talking the Dickerson Waldron thing, they've never been part of a team who've drafted someone with that slow of a 3 cone. Now, agility drills seem to be getting slower and slower throughout draft classes. That's something to look at, really. That's anecdotal. But Kerhan's 8.07 seconds 3 cone was the slowest. But obviously, he wasn't drafted. But yeah, so 7.82 seconds. I filled that in on my spreadsheet in orange because it's something to note, along with him being 6'4", so a bit shorter than perhaps they'd like. But tape-wise, incredible movement skills and athleticism. So, does the 3 cone matter? He also did run a 4.93 seconds 40-yard dash, which kind of shows up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Although he did seem raw in pass protection, though.
Yes. I should specify. Poor job explaining by me. I should specify just out in space on runs,
Yeah. I mean, he does look incredible. Like, how many 300-pounders move like that on either side of the ball type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And another one who, is he going to be there at 9? He's been getting a lot of media kind of attention, and you just wonder, is that reflected by the league? With him being only 6'4", does he project more to being a guard? His, like you said, his pass pro is kind of patchy. It's quite a high pick but
yeah,
the movement, the movement skills to the second level, even the third level, just so, just gliding out there. That's kind of nuts.
I mean, some people think he's a guard. Maybe that's just because they're typecasting based off of height and how well he flies off the snap and, blocking zone and stuff. But I don't know. He can probably hold up a tackle fine. I just think a good coach just thinks he's raw and let me use those traits because there are A1 elite traits.
Yeah. And Should says, well, most of his experience came on the left side, especially at left tackle. I think he had 11 starts there in 2021. So something to factor in, because with Seattle, it's kind of like, well, right tackle, we've got an undrafted free agent there, albeit who filled in well. But I think I'm slightly concerned that Kerhan's style is going to get found out in 2022. Like, technique-wise, he needs a bit of an upgrade there in pass pro. But then on the left side, we've got this whole thing which we've been talking about with Dwayne Brown and then Forsyth. So it's like, where's the real hole? Maybe you just take the best tackle available and figure that crap out afterwards.
Because some of these guys have played or are right tackles.
Yes.
Evan Neal is a first-year left tackle right now. He played right tackle before this past season, for example.
Very good point. So who's your
and
next
also
guy?
sorry to cut you off, but Stone Forsyth has also played right tackle before at Florida.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe we should talk about him, but he's very experienced, so I don't think it's off the wall if he finds himself starting in 2022 in some capacity. But
Griff, let me ask you this. Of the tackles that you've watched, how many would you say put on better tape than Stone Forsyth did in college?
Well, that's where the conversation around like that second cluster that we talked about, because I think he's right up there with some of them.
The weird thing about Forsyth as well is his issue weren't really his like pass protection tape, right? Like his pass protection was incredibly polished, like so polished the like real people who know a lot more about offensive line than me, like for instance Brandon Thorne does excellent work. They're putting him like, I don't want to now I've credited Brandon Thorne and now I can't remember, but they were putting him like as a round 2 kind of player, right?
Many were.
And saying his pass pro is so good, like
even former NFL offensive linemen are like, oh yeah, he's a second rounder.
right. And his profile as well, having those long arms, the heights, the ability to 4.63 seconds short shuttle at his size as well. That's pretty impressive. 27.5-inch vert, pretty good.
He had a good combine. So like, yeah, all the superficial things, like even before we get subjective with tape, he has the height and length. He has the combine. He played good against good competition. He had hundreds of reps, played at Florida. And then he had, getting into the subjective realm, he had good tape against good competition. So he's
like Schneider constantly references the game against Georgia and that defensive front. And he's right. Like Georgia's nuts. So the issue for him was the lack of run blocking in that offense. They knew that when they took him. Why he fell as far as he did, there's probably stuff we don't know about. Maybe some kind of weird medical thing. Maybe, we don't know. But anyway, it's a bit weird he fell as far as he did based on what we've said. But the lack of run blocking clearly is the biggest obstacle right now. And just learning how to like stick on blocks, how to get low at his height. That is a challenge.
Because he's a giraffe, so.
And you don't want to always be running towards the left and giving him a kick out block, which is in theory probably easier for his height. McVay's done interesting things with how he, used Whitworth as a sort of taller blocker, right? And sort of schemed around his offensive line talent. But you don't always want to be in that situation where you're just running left all the time. Anyway, so in answer to your question, Ty, even though you asked Griff, but I think we probably both agree that, like Griff said, there's a lot of the kind of tier 2 guys who he's sort of similar to. There's actually a few who match up really well. In there. Yeah, there's a few who match up really well, and maybe a few of them in their similarities end up dropping like Forsyth did. But anyway, so I think the next guy. Now, you might disagree, but I think the next guy is Charles Cross out of Mississippi State. So, giving you the measurables again, he's 6'5", so that's a nice tick. 34.5-inch long arms. He ran a 4.95 seconds 40-yard dash, which is nuts. His issue, if you can call it that, is a 7.88 seconds 3-cone, which again, that's slower than they'd like.
Which is crazy to me because
that is nuts. Yeah, and his testing's a lie, basically. I think.
Yeah, he looks like he could guard a Kyrie Irving crossover at the top of the key.
Ooh,
like that guy. He moves laterally so well. He has such good feet. I don't know where that 3-cone came from.
Well, again, I think people just have stopped training for it as much. I need to look at it, but like the historic figures. But his weight distribution, his balance, he's so well judged, measured. Like inside moves, he's fine. He's just like I think we talked about him when we were talking about who they could pick at 9 a few podcasts ago. But he's almost boringly good. But I actually watched him again and found it a lot more enjoyable after delving deeper into the class and realizing, this is what like a polished pass protector looks like. But more than that, his kind of, a Kyrie dialed in crossover. That's a good one because his reactive athleticism, right? That's a big word, big 2 words, big term. But you do see that. He's because of how poised and well distributed he is, but also his ability to just react like in the moment and be in control of his body. it is just nuts.
See, I think what would be more informative than a combine for offensive linemen, just have them play 5-on-5 basketball, and then you quickly see who the movers are. Because like the skill position guys, all of them probably look amazing in 5-on-5 basketball, even if they never picked up a basketball before. But if you want to find out who the 300-pounders are that can actually move, like not just measurable traits, but like have got, twitch to them, change of direction, smoothness, coordination, all that stuff, fluidity, have them play 5-on-5 pickup. I'd rather watch that than have them, run a 40-yard dash at 330 pounds.
Yeah. So my questions with him, there's an obvious one, but before that, I didn't see him get like pure like bull rushed that often, and I do wonder. He's fairly light, 307 pounds. Wonder slightly about his ability to anchor, like occasional getting pushed back a bit, but I mean, you have to give ground. Like,
yeah,
you're not holding people, so that's kind of a minor. And then I think we spoke about this as well, but their system being wider splits, that kind of offensive design, right?
Yeah.
That's a kind of transition to the NFL, although they did narrow their splits up sometimes, kind of on certain plays on the left side for whatever reason, mainly due to their protection calls. So that shouldn't be a thing. But the fact he didn't run block that often is Forsyth-esque, I guess. Although there's some great highlights and stuff of him mauling people. Like, he can do it. It's just he didn't do it as often as you'd like. And he's great getting out in space, and he's got enough physicality about him.
Yeah, I agree. He's just not Evan Neal, but he doesn't have to be Evan Neal. It's not like a mark against him. It's just not, he's not maybe a top 10 run blocker, but he's a totally fine run blocker. And he's so good in pass protection. What's so impressive, well, obviously, like outside of the traits and everything and technical proficiency, but like when he's going, he'll go from up against a power rusher one snap, and then he'll go up against a speed rusher, and his sets don't change. Like, so he doesn't, what that means is he doesn't panic against a speed guy. Against Texas A&M, Tyree Johnson, that guy flies off the ball, and Cross he kicks twice, and then he reads the rush, and then if he thinks that he needs to open up and write him off, he will, but he doesn't kick out early, he doesn't kick out super fast. His pacing, tempoing is the same. That versus the other guys in that line, or against Michael Clemons, for example, like he sets to Clemons, who is like a speed to power guy or like a hard corner guy, and he sets to them equally the same. So I think that's just impressive, because that just means he has so much trust and faith, confidence, that he won't get blown up by speed. And then also Michael Clemons is a guy that wants to do like heavy handwork stuff. And he, first of all, if he lands hands first, his hands don't get swatted down, like, which is to say the play strength is there. And then if he's trying to bait them out, he can play that game too and make them like misfire.
His hands are really good. Like the way he resets, they're very well placed, is again measured, under control. He's a really good pass protector. And I really liked your point. Like, he sets up consistently well. Like, his setup point is consistent and again well measured.
Even to DeMarvin Leal, like he didn't like he. So yeah. So to your point about like the bull rush, I was hunting for reps. Okay, who's a guy that really tries to turn it in and just like nuke him? And he gives up a couple of steps, but then he stakes pretty well for like
to Leal.
Yeah.
I need to watch that game.
Relative to his weight. So like whereas Evan Neal is stopping Leal in his tracks immediately, because that's Neal's game, right? But I mean, for Cross, considering like Leal's height, weight, speed, and considering Cross's density, it's like, okay, the strength or power, whatever you want to call it, to weight ratio is there, because he finds his anchor late in the snap, but he still finds it. So I don't know. That's how he can also handle inside counters with ease too. Like,
yep,
He might be the best pure pass protector. I just don't think Neal is that far behind him.
Yeah.
But I'd still think Cross is the number one pass protector.
Yeah, and it is interesting how, cycled through all these other names, came back to Cross, and then I was suddenly like, I mean, yeah, this is pretty special. This is. So I do wonder about how much better he can get, but then how much better do you need to be? Like, it's not like it's a somewhat finesse, but it's not. It's not really like give him a chance to run block more. I'm sure, like he showed enough on those things.
Yeah.
So would you be mad if they picked him at 9?
I would in no scenario would I be mad if they took him.
No.
But like you'd be maybe thinking twice about it only relative to who else is there. So, but like if Gardner or Stingley is there, you'd be like maybe go corner. But because the thing is, it's hard not to think, well, why not just sign Dwayne Brown? Why not just do what it takes? Because even though Dwayne Brown's probably a 1-year solution, that means you can easily get Gardner or Stingley, right? Or whoever else is there. So it's only from like an opportunity cost getting too deep in the weeds with it. But I'm still going to celebrate the pick.
Okay, so next guy, and I'm going to take the initiative here. Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa, I think on the Seahawks board would be the next guy because 6'7", 325 pounds, 34.25-inch long arms, 4.89 second 40, 28 reps on the bench, which he did at his pro day, 28-inch vertical jump, 111-inch board jump, and then a 7.25 seconds 3-cone, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then a 4.62 second short shuttle, and he plays with that kind of, well, there is definitely an element of fake tough guy, which you messaged me, and there is definitely an element of that, and sometimes it's over the top and it's unnecessary, but then that could also be the sort of defensive preferring minds of us talking, right? But like for instance, in the Senior Bowl, he like chucked the edge rusher right back at Ridder and like almost broke Ridder's knees. Like, thankfully, our man Ridder was okay, but and then there's the other thing of Penning is level of competition. Playing at Northern Iowa, you want him to dominate people all the time. For full disclosure, I watched North Dakota State game. He did pretty much dominate in that game. His movement skills show up, right? Like he's a really, really light on his feet kind of guy.
Yeah.
Really good mover. Love how he snatches and throws versus like speed rushers looking to try and bend and dip the edge. And he's aware of stunts. Do you agree with the positives?
Yeah, I definitely see the combine on tape. He is tough, he is gritty, he is high effort, all that stuff. But really, so are most of these guys. But it's true. I think he actually is pretty good technique in pass protection, at least with his feet. Like his feet, he's pretty consistent.
Yep.
I do think though that maybe it's just by virtue of being 6'8", because it's hard to find 6'8" guys with anchors. But I do think he doesn't have, as quite stout an anchor as you want, especially for the type of player he builds himself as. And then I think he can be a little soft at the top of the arc with guys that try to corner hard on him.
As in, so.
But maybe it's just a hands issue. Maybe he just needs to be more patient with his hands.
The way he really looks to get hands on early, which I guess, I mean, that makes sense if you're longer than them. But I also saw him with that kind of impatience. I saw that show up with how he turns. Like when he's got a wide speed rusher, he turns quite a bit and doesn't stay as square as you'd like. And so he's exposing his inside pad to inside moves, right? And counters and all that sort of stuff. And it's sort of like opening the gate a bit too early. That's what I saw. But then that's kind of a hyper specific example versus like wide 9, kind of like actually a wide 9 dude. So
yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I don't see. I feel like I think he's a fringe first, maybe an early second. I just don't know if I see enough separation from some of the other guys.
Yeah.
But maybe I
The
need to
Iowa
watch more
State.
of them.
Well, the
I
Iowa
only-
State game was interesting to me because, well, that defense isn't the best thing to have watched. That was the other game I watched him in, along with the Senior Bowl, and it's not the best defense to watch a tackle play against, really, because of
I
how
agree.
odd front. You're blocking like a 5 tech or a 4-eye. It's very kind of in a phone booth. It's not really. I mean, yeah, NFL teams do bits of that, but realistically, it's not that translatable. But he didn't look stand out, right? Like you wouldn't have thought this guy is a first round pick like this. So I mean, it's harsh because the rest of his team was completely outmatched in that game as well. Actually, I say completely outmatched. Did Northern Iowa win that? I was not paying attention. I think they pushed it close, but yeah, maybe I'm tripping. But anyway, so
Well, you're not alone. I mean, a lot of people still think he's a good player. They just kind of think, I don't know. They just don't have him up there with the big three, I guess.
yeah, no, Northern Iowa only lost by 6 points in that game, but yeah, he's I take him in like round 2. I
don't think he's going to be in round 2 though.
But he's not going to be in round. I think he's going to be clear first round because of his testing.
Yeah.
You know how physical he plays. I wouldn't hate it. It's just if Seattle does it at 9, then I'm like, ooh. And then
I would not take him at 9. Is I guess how I mean, if he falls to 40, sure. But he might be one of those tackles, and there are tackles every year that go in the back half of the first round. Maybe he's just one of those guys.
If they traded back to like, how would you feel if they traded back to like 15 and took him?
If they trade back to 15, I feel like the best player that will be there would probably be Ebiketie. And that was edge. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, man. I just don't want. I'd be really disappointed if Trevor Penning was their first overall pick,
right,
of this draft. I'd be pretty bummed.
I'd get it, but I think this is where our defensive bias also comes in.
Yeah,
his pad level is quite inconsistent, which so as a tall guy, which is going to be a thing, right? Like it's easy to point out, but he does get quite high out his stance sometimes. It's the other thing I've got in my notes. I think I've covered everything else. So the next person. So again, we got a bit of a discussion here. So we should probably touch on the unfortunate Bernhard Raimann, but apparently Americans can only pronounce that Rayman because
Raymond. I just
Raimann is way too difficult, even though he's actually Austrian. So we can mix a bit of German in there, but no.
Interesting.
No, have to go Raimann. No, Rayman, whatever. Rayman. So his issue is he is going to be 25 when the season starts, and he played for a small school in central Michigan, and he has not been playing football as long as some of these other people. And
although he doesn't play like he hasn't played football.
No, he's very good, isn't he? Well, he obviously would have played football in Austria as well. It's just he won't have been playing since Pee-wee. Yeah. And he has 32 7/8 of an inch long arms, which is obviously way underneath that 34 inches. That is that's not great.
I mean, that's
despite being 6'6", that is brutal because the rest of his testing as well. 30 reps on the bench, 30.5 inch vertical, that's nuts. 117 inch broad jump, that's nuts. 7.46 3-cone, that's good. 4.49 second short shuttle, that's really good. So like he tested great. It's just his arms are short.
And he's old.
And he's an old.
If
hang on.
Yeah.
No, I did read out the right one. That's good.
I was gonna say if I watched his LSU game and I had no preconception about him, like all the red flags, I would have thought, oh man, this guy's like a top 15 player, top 20 player.
And he was getting that talk, especially before the arm length. And
so I don't. And I think because of the measurements, I think he's out of Seattle's consideration.
Oh, 100%, because of where he'll go. Like he'll go based off the tape. Like he should be a round 2 guy, right? Like he should be.
Yeah.
So
how many years did he play in college?
here we go. Well, he was a tight end for his first 2 seasons at Central Michigan. He moved to tackle in his sophomore year.
So last year.
So 6 games in COVID shortened 2020. Then 2021 was his first year as like a full-time offensive tackle.
So
which is kind of nuts how good he looks.
I know.
It's testament to his athletic ability,
Yeah.
also the level of comp. But then, like you said,
he might have been like a fake tight end, like a jumbo tackle.
I'm sure there's an element of fakeness to that. Yeah, just get him on the field in some way to give him experience of like higher level football. But like they played against Mizzou as well, and SEC comp. Like obviously it's not probably the talent of LSU, but still look really comfortable.
Yeah,
it's just I unfortunately had seen the arm length thing.
Yeah,
and you like sort of look at him sauntering away on the wide angle, and it's like those arms are quite like they don't match his, and it does kind of show up. But then also I heard a great thing, Dante Scarnecchia with Robert Mays on the Athletic podcast, and he was saying like basically like you just need to be long enough, like, and what I took from that was length is obviously nice, like you want to have length, but if you're controlled and you've got the guy still in front of you with the arms you've got, like if anything, like having loads of length probably can create bad habits, right?
Yeah, sure.
And especially in college, you see guys just they're so long they don't have to do anything, they just put their hands on people and it's over. But Ryman, I think his technique is so polished aside from that, especially for his lack of experience playing, and also his athletic ability shines. It has to be because he has these shorter arms.
Right.
He'll be a fascinating player to keep track of in the NFL. He doesn't really project to guard, which is usually what happens if people have shorter arms. So
right, because he's too tall.
Sink or swim.
Yeah, I don't know. He'll be a fun guy to watch in the league. I think if the fans of the team ends up drafting him, I would go dive into that sophomore year tape where he's still 23, but just to make sure that he's still really good then. Because
he's not like an old guy who it clicked for. But then that's unfair because he he's still fairly new to the sport.
Right. So it's how do you balance all those things? I don't know.
He began playing American football, as it's called in Europe, at the age of 14 for the Vienna Vikings youth team. There you go. So he has been playing football for a bit, albeit, and I should say, I'd be remiss not to mention, the Austrians are pretty good at football in Europe.
All right.
And I'm sure they have a few American coaches, so it's not.
Are you familiar with the Vienna Vikings, Matty?
Well, I've heard of them. I am not on speaking terms, not through animosity, but through just I've never been in touch with them.
They go to another school, Ty. We wouldn't have heard of them.
Yeah.
They're down the road from me, like short walk. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's Ryman dealt with.
Yeah. So probably we can drop him from consideration unless he's there in the 3rd round for some reason. Or 4th round, but he won't be.
Abraham Lucas out of Washington State we'll talk about because Pete Carroll was seen talking to Andy Dixon just before Lucas was running his 40 at the Combine. I screenshotted that like a degenerate and tweeted it. He's 6'6", 315 pounds, arms 1/8 of an inch shorter than the 34-inch mark, but 4.92 seconds 40, 24 reps on the bench, 27-inch vertical, 107-inch broad, 7.25 seconds 3-cone. Again, that's nuts. And then a 4.40 seconds short shuttle, and played right tackle, right? So interesting prospect. I did not like his tape.
The main thing I thought was, wow, for a guy of his density and like athleticism, his anchor was actually pretty lacking. Like I was like Kayvon Thibodeau, I was like, okay, he's a good college tackle at minimum. And Kayvon Thibodeau, I was like, oh, this is what Kayvon Thibodeau is should be top 5 player taken overall. So But I don't know. I thought his technique wasn't horrible. I thought he tried a variety of different sets and seemed equally comfortable in them.
Yeah, vertical set, jump set,
and he can be
quick
square
set.
when he realizes he needs to be conservative and all that. Um, I actually don't remember much about the run blocking. Maybe you can comment on that. But to me, he just seems like a solid second rounder. However, I think Stone Forsyth was better at Florida.
I don't. So what I really didn't like was he has that kind of. He has all the athletic ability that you could want, right? And all the size. He's blessed with so much size and all that sort of stuff. But he doesn't actually show that. Like he doesn't displace, move, as you'd call it, people. Is more kind of he's an obstacle for people to get around, and often like Washington, Oregon State, even their guys aren't getting like battered. They can't get around him because he's just so big. Like he does that thing that I saw from who was I talking about? Penning, but it does it a bit more often when he's kick sliding back. His outside leg or his back leg gets quite wide, and so he doesn't stay square. He kind of turns a bit. But then that is kind of their air raid splits as well. Or what are they doing, run and shoot? I don't know what the heck. But then run blocking as well. He really struggled to stick on blocks. He's just an odd. I mean, I don't really like using this term, but kind of like a looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane kind of thing. Like he's just where is the which I mean I just trying not to say that, but I said it, so there we go. But he just like, where's the nasty? Like it's what put you.
Yeah,
you've been blessed with these incredible athletic gifts. Where is the nasty? Now don't get me wrong, he's not dreadful. It's just not like, given where he'll probably go because of the profile, I would be like not very enthusiastic about it, and I expected to be a lot more, I guess. Yeah, I mean, he's stunned to wear. He's it's just there's no power. I don't understand it. There's no power. No anchor.
I mean,
no pop.
the anchor, because he looks like he has density, right? Like he doesn't, for a taller guy, it doesn't seem like he should have an issue with sinking low enough, but I mean he can get tossed around a little bit. So
I mean, he's quick. He is quick. Like you can see the athleticism in terms of him getting back in his set. He's quick, and I think he's strong. It's just yeah.
All right, so there are like 3 other tackles left on the short list.
Yeah, so you take. I'll read out people I've got down, and you take it in the direction you want. So Tyler Smith, Daniel Falale, Rasheed Walker, Nicolas Petitfrere, Spencer Burford, Kalen Dersh.
Can you say the Ohio State tackle's name once again? I want to hear it. I just want to hear it. I like it.
I don't know which one that is. I'm sorry.
Petite Frere, or however you use it.
Do you guys have Petit Philo yogurt? Yogurt?
I don't think so.
No. There you go. He always reminds me of that. It's quite good here. Anyway, Max Mitchell, Braxton Jones.
All right. Of those guys, I've seen Walker, Smith, Falele, Mitchell, and Petit Frere. And I think I would stack those. Okay, so Tyler Smith, I think, has the movement skills of Charles Cross. He's just raw, but he still was incredibly good for a guy that was raw in pass protection.
I absolutely loved him. Like he is so raw. Like his pass pros is so poor. Like, but he still
makes it work somehow.
Yeah, he was still making it work. Like he had rough moments. Houston was rough. Heck, every game I watched him in, he had really rough moments, especially against like wide rush, like hugging, hand placement, lack of kind of resetting, feet kind of just vibing out there. But he has so many pancakes on his tape, like legit pancakes, not kind of fake tough guy.
Yeah.
Deal. So much power. real anchor strength. Tested great, and it shows. Like, he's a people mover. He's just a bit of a turner in pass pro, but in terms of his like athleticism showing up and what you can do with that, like, wow. And he's 6'4" and 5/8 of an inch, so borderline maybe, but you round it up, 6'5", 324 pounds, 34-inch arms. So he ticks those things, and then he tested great with the old 25 reps on the bench.
He's beefy too. Like, he's not 305. He's like 320.
Yes, 324. His 3 cone was 7.78 seconds, so they might be slightly concerned about that. But then, he seems like a very high ceiling pick, but it could go wrong. Like, that's one you take if you trust your offensive line coach. I think like he's probably a 3rd rounder, but he'll go 2nd because
some
of his
people
profile.
Are talking about him as fringe 1st.
Yeah, because of his profile and the fact that he's nasty. Like, he's the opposite of Lucas in the sense that he has the size and he puts it to use and he sticks on blocks. He's a mauler. So
he may not be. I mean, 6'4", 5'8" inches. I don't know if he is tall enough for them, but he has the arm length. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen a couple people put him like 25-ish range. So
he's a weird one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was going to ask about Falele if you guys are done with Smith, because remember the Seahawks had Trent Brown in for a visit. What was it, about a month ago, and it seemed like they really wanted to sign him, but he ended up going back to New England. Falele's got that size, right? Because he's just a massive human being. 6'8", 384 pounds, 35 1/8 inch arms. Like, dude is huge. What do you think about him? Obviously played at Minnesota.
So real quick on him before Griff gives you a bit more of a breakdown. His testing is weird because, like, he's so 6'8", 384 pounds, like you said, 35 and 1/8 of an inch long arms. Like, he has the size. So his testing is a bit like, it's bad, but also he's so much bigger that he's kind of a very unique case. So like a 5.60 seconds 40 at his pro day, that is like, that'd be way slower than Seattle's taken. But then does that matter? 29.5 inch vertical, that's really good. But then a 94-inch broad and a 8.47 seconds 3 cone is dreadful, and is 5.0 seconds short shuttles borderline as well. So, but then I guess you discount that because on tape, Griff, he can move and has great feet.
He moves really well for a guy that's 380 pounds. Like twinkle toes sometimes when he gets out in space. And I don't think he's like raw technique wise either. I mean, he just seems like a 2nd round grade, maybe 3rd round right tackle, like ready to go. That's the thing. He is a right tackle. That also, Ty, to your point, Trent Brown, he's played left tackle, but he's primarily been a right tackle his whole career. So that might, I mean, Seattle could sign a tackle and still draft a tackle highly. Like, my assumption was that if they sign a tackle, they're probably not looking at a tackle the first 2 rounds. That could still be wrong. But if that assumption was true, and they take care of the right tackle spot, then left tackle, that only leaves room for Forsyth being there. Maybe that means they think highly of Forsyth. Maybe they just put Trent Brown at left tackle, and maybe they draft a left tackle anyway. Whatever. I don't know.
What I would say about him as well is I used to write about Minnesota and the Golden Gophers, and they run the heck out the ball, mainly just duo and tight zone, and he showed an ability to get out on wide zone on the front side of that. He could get out there, so again, pretty good for a guy his size. But his best work came on the backside of runs, where a bit like what we were speaking about with Kerhan, but it's in gun where he's moving and displacing people. So impressive stuff. Kind of a ceiling pick, I'd guess, because you're like, well, this rare size, we can try and coach him up on the things. Like, I think his feet occasionally died on him, even though they're still light and good. And he kind of gets out really wide to wide speed rush, and that can leave him susceptible to the inside move.
Yeah.
And he's still a big dude, so reactive athleticism wise, it's not always there. But can you work with that? I'm sure you can. Like everyone gets beat in the NFL.
Like you said, they ran the ball a lot. He doesn't have a lot of reps, so there is rawness there. So he needs some experience
and
there,
a lot of RPO. If it wasn't, a run, like the pass game was basically RPO.
Right. So like I'm watching, I'm hunting for like the pure pass sets. I'm like, okay, this isn't too. He's not one of those tackles who just doesn't seem to have a plan or know what he's doing. Like he seemed fairly confident in it. So, yeah. Last guy, Rasheed Walker.
Yes.
I actually liked him a lot. His Michigan game, I think, is incredible. But then like 3-4 weeks preceding, he actually looks pretty bad against OSU. He gets whooped by Harrison and Tyreek Smith. But like those guys want to corner hard. They want to jab step, make bait out hands, and then swipe them away, some sort of chop move to get clean. And he routinely was just giving up his arms.
Yeah, that's a big thing. He's a big two-hand striker, right?
Like, he is. But then really against Michigan, he's way more patient. And he's using the same like set technique with his feet. He's kick stepping twice. And then against Michigan, he's just patient and he is handling Hutchinson and Ojabo until like late in the fourth quarter. Ojabo actually of the two was the one started to like speed to power him actually a little bit. But based off the Michigan game alone, I would take him. I would take him in the back of the first if I was a team picking there.
So in the Ohio State game, were rushers flashing hands to try and get him to go early?
A little bit. I think he just wanted. I think actually, I was so puzzled by it. He was just wanting to get his hands on them. Period. To like run them off.
It sounds like the Auburn game which I watched, was kind of a middle ground of the two experiences. He looked. What I saw, quite inconsistent.
That's his thing, man.
His landmarks, even his aiming points climbing, because he can move people in the run game, but his aiming points are like,
so I think that comes down to he's not raw in the sense that he doesn't know what he's doing. I think he just needs to be honed and have the right coaching staff to like make sure he's not trying things he shouldn't.
Should say 33 and 5/8 of an inch long arms. That is below 34 inches if you're a mathematics wizard. So there you go.
But I like him a lot though, and I would be ecstatic if he was the only tackle they got out of this draft. If they just stuck him picked at 40, 41, I'd be cool with it. Left tackle, I mean,
because his vertical set's comfortable as well, right? Like he's speedy in it. It's just he's just going to the wrong point sometimes. Like he needs to kind of pick his depth better, I'd say.
I think that's a good way of putting it. He's strong too. I mean, he's a good anchor, I think. I think he could be a franchise left tackle if he develops the way he needs to. So,
well, there you go. So that's tackle overload. A few names we didn't mention.
I don't like Petit Frere, by the way.
No, Max Mitchell tested bad.
I like Mitchell though. He's so much more athletic than his combine. He had to have been hurt. It makes no sense.
33.5 inch long arms, probably hurt. Yeah, he's
probably a third.
He's the quick feet guy, right? Mitchell.
Very quick feet, but his combine, he's like one of the worst testers ever. So
yeah,
something had to have been.
Yeah,
but I think he's a third rounder though. Someone
to look for is Braxton Jones out of Southern Utah. I watched, managed to get Southern Utah film. Don't ask why. 6'5", a quarter and a quarter of an inch, 35 and 3/8 of an inch long arms. He really struggles to sink, so he lacks power. He's all upper body, questionable at anchor, but good sets, kind of high, real interest in day three kind of developmental project, I'd say. Though he could go higher because that is kind of nuts measurables wise. And then I wanted to talk about, finally, Bamadile Olaseni out of Utah, who is British and played for the London Blitz, and he's 27, but he's 6'7", 339 pounds with 36 and a quarter inch arms. Get him into camp. Get a 27-year-old left tackle. There's a few other interesting.
Is he an undrafted candidate?
Yeah, he'll be undrafted. Yeah.
27.
But
Brandon
Matt,
Williams of offensive tackles.
guys, be nice. Okay, so then there's some other names. Matt Wadetsko out of North Dakota and David Cochran out of Georgia Tech. I'd say keep an eye on them because they're two long, kind of day 3 undrafted guys. There we go. Enjoy the draft. We'll be back with live reaction, though whether that's actually live, we'll figure that out. Or maybe patch it into
Seattle Overload
Matty's
podcast.
monster kind of episode.
Hell yeah, brother.